Welcome back to the Live Greater podcast. Today we have on Mandie Kai. She is an intuitive mentor, meditation guide, podcaster, and philanthropist who lives in Nam, Australia, which is by Melbourne. Or is it in Melbourne?
So Nam is the Aboriginal word for Melbourne.
Oh, okay. That's cool. And she is no stranger to leading movements. She was on the team when Couch Surfing's worldwide community grew to over 1 million, led thousands of spontaneous volunteers to help a flood of affected community, coordinated thousands of volunteer performers in a globally televised ceremony, and now she is a leading movement of purpose-driven humans to create their own soul-led lives that change our world for the better. So good. Welcome, Mandie.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So I had a question about some things I just shared. So
Sure.
Couch Surfing's worldwide community grew to over 1 million. So what were you doing? What was your role in this?
Okay, so do you know about couch surfing? Okay, were you
Couch
ever
surfing. I think I
couch
said,
surfing?
yeah,
So it was
okay.
very pre-Airbnb. It is still going right now, but back before Airbnb, it was a movement of people who really believed that we were changing the world one couch at a time by staying in people's homes around the world rather than staying in hostels or hotels. And it
Okay.
was all about creating intercultural understanding and connection around the world. And my role at that time that I was involved was the communications manager. And yeah, it was just a very, very special time in couch surfing. So like I said, it still exists, but it's been sort of surpassed now by the paid version, which is Airbnb.
Okay.
But this is traveling back when I got involved was 2007, and discovering couch surfing truly changed my life because I suddenly saw how kind people were and how
Mm.
generous and trusting, like people from around the world who had never met me gave me the keys to their house at times and, just opened their homes and invited me in, and they would take me on tours of the city. And like it's such a special time. Like, so when I first discovered it, I was in my 20s, I was backpacking. And yeah, and then I just fell in love with it and then wanted to be more involved. And back in the heyday, they didn't have enough money to pay people to work for them. We sort
Uh-huh.
of ran on the what's the smell of an oily rag with donations from the members. But there
Mhm.
was a group of us who were very committed volunteers, and they would put us up. They had enough money to put us up in accommodation, so they'd pay for our accommodation and they would pay for our food, and we would work for free in exchange. And we called them collectives. So
Okay.
I worked in the Thailand collective, and we also did one in Alaska that I was involved in. Like, it was such a special time. Like, we're still really good friend. I'm really good friends with some of the people that I worked with back then. It felt like family. We really believed in this movement that we were building, and other people did as well. Because when I was there, like you said, it grew from 250,000 members to 1 million in a year. And I
Wow.
believe now there's like 14 million members of couch surfing. So yeah, it was a very, very special time in my life being involved in that project.
That is so fascinating. So how does that work? Like, is there a website people go to like sign up like
Yeah.
Airbnb?
Yeah, so it's called couchsurfing.org. And yeah, I must admit now, I'm not, you've got that wasp flying
Yeah.
around. Um, yeah, I believe, and I honestly, I am not involved in it anymore. It was just one of those like moments in time, but I do believe the website is still there. You
Mhm.
set a profile up. I'm not too sure whether or not you now need to pay for it. Back in the day, you didn't have to pay for it to be a member. But yeah, you have a profile, and that's how and you would build references on your
Okay.
profile, which would help people choose whether or not to stay with you. So it was very much a community about trust and,
Yeah.
about connection and community. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, as a 20-year-old girl traveling by themselves too, just the safety of it just makes me think of that because I have daughters that age. So,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, like because you do like I was as a traveling young woman, I would be very selective. I would obviously only stay with people whose profiles were very full and had a lot
mhm.
of references. And then once I started to meet people, then they would recommend other people to connect with. And
Oh
so I
yeah.
have a global network of friends now who I still go and stay with. You know,
Cool.
we've just maintained contact. It's yeah, it was yeah, like I said, such a special time of life.
You also mentioned that it kind of shaped how you are now and the trajectory of your life. How did that happen? Like,
Well, that was very interesting because when the role that I was in, one would say was probably not exactly the right fit for me. And I wasn't selected or invited to go. When they moved from Alaska, they were going to start to set up a headquarters
mm.
in Berkeley, California. And I wasn't invited to go with them. So I always joke going, effectively, I got fired from my volunteer role. And at the time, it was completely jarring. So I think maybe by then I was 30 years old and I returned to Australia like completely lost and directionless. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And of course, like at those, like, and that's where I've learned now that these challenging moments come to put us onto the right path. You
Yeah.
know, unexpected redundancies, illnesses, relationship breakdowns, like these things can like as shocking and as challenging as they are at the time, they can truly set us onto a different path. And that was what that moment did for me because I came back and I couch surfed at a friend's house and I spent 4 months. If they didn't have a couch, thankfully I had a spare room there. But I spent 4 months in my friend's house going, what am I going to do next? And I'd been partying a lot during my 20s. So this, I had, a great, well, addiction basically. I was still drinking a lot, taking drugs. I still had an eating disorder at that point. I was smoking, drinking coffee. Like not that drinking coffee is too bad, like that's a failure, but it was one of my little addiction pods. And and I realized like, oh, if I'm going to really work out where it is that I want to be, and I was searching for more purpose. Like that working for couch surfing gave me such a good taste for what it felt like to be feeling like you're really contributing to something greater than yourself. And and there's no feeling like that in the world.
Yeah.
Like when you just know, okay, what I'm doing is really making a difference and it's exciting. And but like I said, the role itself, I knew that I wasn't in the right role because I
Mm.
was stressed and you
Uh-huh.
know and so I was like, what am I going to do though? And of course, when you're looking for a new role, it's very easy just to go back to what you were doing beforehand. So I had a background in project management and communications, and so of course I just came back and I was starting to look for roles like that.
Mm.
And but I knew in my heart that was not it. And so it set me off on more of a spiritual journey of going, okay, I found a book in a flea market. It was called The Energy Cleanse. I can't even remember who it's by, but I should really remember it to give them credit for this because it was this 3-day energy cleanse and it was a whole like mind, body, spirit cleanse. And you'd go into silence. So I'd said to my friend, hey, I'm just like couch surfing at your house, but I'm going to go into silence. I'm going to do this retreat in your house. And I was so lucky that they were just like, okay, Mandy. It was just the quirky friend who's still trying to sort their life out. and and I went in and it was this guiding process of not only just, cleansing your diet. So I gave up nicotine and I gave up coffee and didn't drink for those few days, but it gave me this guidance to start to connect in to what is the inner guidance, like where am I being guided? And then the next step to that was to go on a 10-day Vipassana retreat. So I really dove into the silence and spent 10 days there and that's, I don't know if you've ever done one of those or heard about them.
I haven't. I have a friend who's done it a few times.
Oh, a few times. Wow,
Yeah.
very brave, bold friend of yours.
Yeah. Well, the second and third time, I think she was more volunteer helping because she's like, I didn't
Okay.
have to be silent the whole time.
Yeah, like there's definitely a moment in the 10 days that you go, am I freaking crazy? Like this is so hard. But I did that, and that gave me a very strong foundation to my meditation practice, and to really start to listen. And in that time, I started to hear this little call that said, go and learn Reiki in Byron Bay. Now, for the Americans here or the global audience, like Byron Bay in Australia is like Glastonbury is to England. It's like the mecca for alternative living, or I guess it's like
Okay.
Maybe San Francisco. Is that your equivalent in America? I don't know.
No, I don't know where it would be considered. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
Portland. I don't know. I
oh
don't
yeah, okay, yeah, I have heard of Portland. I've not been there, but
know.
yeah, it's definitely the alternative place. And I'd always thought that I would go and live there maybe like one day in the far future, but it was certainly, a place where I was going to find a Reiki master to learn Reiki. But I didn't know Reiki back then. I had heard about it, and I was like really, really trying to like justify, like I almost argued with this little voice going, well, look, I was in Brisbane at the time, which is about a couple of hours north of Byron Bay. And I was like, look, it would be much more convenient if I did it in Brisbane. So I was looking for Reiki courses and masters in Brisbane, but it didn't feel right. Like we've got
Mm,
this internal GPS that
yeah.
tells us whether something was feeling right or wrong. And that's what I was just trusting. And so I went, okay, I'll go down, I'll learn Reiki, I'll live in my car. I had a station wagon at the time so I could sleep in it. And I was like, and then I'll come back to Brisbane and I'm gonna sort my life out. Like that was sort of the attitude back then of just like,
Uh,
all right, then I'll just do this thing and then I'm gonna sort my life out when I come back to the city. Well, I went to couch surf in Byron Bay, and there was, oh my gosh, this place, I couldn't even imagine how beautiful it was. Like we drove up this, I followed the host that I was staying with. It
mhm.
was a 5-minute drive up this dirt track in the forest. And at the end of it, we spat out at the top, and it was just this expansive view down to the ocean. And I was like, where am I? It's so beautiful. Like that whole region is just breathtakingly beautiful. And anyway, I fell in love with the place, and after a few days she said, I'm trying to rent a spare room. Like you could move in if you want.
Wow.
And despite not having any plan, I didn't have a job, I didn't know anyone there. I didn't have any idea other than the fact that I'd followed this little voice that said, go and learn Reiki in Byron Bay. And it was just one of those moments where it felt choiceless. Like it was like, I just
Mm,
have to say yes to this. This
uh-huh.
feels too good. So I said yes. And that was my home then. That unfolded. I lived there for 14 years. I've only
Oh,
just left
wow.
like last year.
Oh, wow.
So it was the place I was meant to be. I eventually found my Reiki master and studied Reiki, and then I learned about coaching. And because I was devouring personal development, and I
Mhm.
was like, so what are all these people who are doing this that I'm reading about? And I heard, oh, they're coaches. So I went and studied coaching, and I spent like a year and a half really in that forest. So it was off the grid, this place. So I was off the grid, cabin in a forest. So we had our own electricity through solar,
Mm.
our own water supply through tanks. She was actually asked to leave the property because she had a dog. So within a month, it was my own place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just like life lined me up there, and
Yeah.
it became my healing sanctuary. It's where I healed from my eating disorder. I had a 16-year eating disorder. I had bulimia. I recovered from addiction, so I got over my drinking habit and I gave up drugs, and I just immersed myself in learning Reiki, learning coaching. I was very lucky that I had the funds from a sale of a property that had basically funded all of this for years, all the
Wow.
travel. all of this healing, and it was one of the best well, I'd say the best investment I ever made in my life was this time to heal, because it changed who I was. And yeah, discovered coaching, and then ended up as a career coach for a university, local in the area, which I was in for 7 years. So it totally changed my life. Like that
Yeah.
pivotal moment of going, loved being involved in couch surfing, but then yeah, it was not meant to be. And I was jarred and, you know, shifted. That's what these things, and I've seen that time and time and time again, in the work that I've done. And you've probably seen it too, Shelley, even in your own life, that these things come to help move us into where we're meant to go, and
Yes.
into the person that we're meant to be. So it's
Yeah.
given me
By
more
choice or
trust.
not choice. I mean, you're gonna
Yeah,
get molded, right?
exactly.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and on that, like, yeah, you were talking about how difficulties really help us. We can grow from that. And so
Mm.
how do you think that is for people to really see the lessons from these difficult times? Like how, instead of, just seeing the good out of it and not just the hard part.
Well, that's it. And look, it can be really hard. Like, let's be honest, life is difficult. And particularly now, like we're being presented with incredibly challenging things to go through personally and collectively. So I think it's about one, honoring the difficulty as well. Like it's
Mm.
none of this is about bypassing the challenge and the actual feelings and and the healing journey we need to go through. But what I've learned in my own life is that the more challenges that I've gone through, and I can see the trajectory of how they've always led me ultimately to the place that I've needed to be, or helped me develop more into the person I'm meant to be. It's helped me develop a faith during those challenging moments where I can hold myself more to go, okay, even though this feels so difficult and feels so challenging, I know that it's serving me on some greater purpose. And it's just developing like that really strong faith that, we're not alone on this journey, that
Right.
it feels like we are, but we are deeply, deeply connected to divine intelligence that's always got us. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I think that's it. It's just like developing the faith muscles. I think, and I think that comes with the more that we go through the challenges and we come out the other end and we go, oh, okay, we've gotten through it. And then, yeah, that faith muscle gets stronger.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's what uh, God wants to happen for us, right? He wants us to mold us into something greater. And so these difficult times, we can learn from them and grow from them. If we're in our comfort zone, we
We're
don't
not
grow so
growing.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I'm really seeing that now, like even more like I'm seeing it, yeah, like more individually and collectively, and I'm starting to even just feel that even in this immense, like the tragedies and the pain, and that we're all so connected in this human experience, and we've
Yeah.
come down like I'm really starting to feel like, wow, it is such a training ground. Like I never really resonated with the thing of like, oh, life is a school and we're all here learning, but I actually do think now that there is something to that. We're on this spiritual quest, each and every one of us, to learn how to embody and express love in a deeper way for ourselves and for others. And yeah, and I think one thing that I did in my healing journey was I connected with someone in a recovery conference, and I love that she invited me to do Melody, I think it was Melody Beattie's Make Miracles in 40 Days.
Okay.
And it was this process where at the beginning of each day you wrote to each other and you said, today I'm grateful for. But you don't just say what you're grateful for in terms of all the, blessings and the great stuff. You actually write what the reality of your life is in this moment in time. And you're meant to just do it for 40 days, and you share it with one another. And so you get to hear each other's lists. And we ended up loving this process so much. We did it for like, I think 276 days or something.
Oh, wow.
And we used it as this like method to really dive into like deep honesty with each other about really where we were at in life. What were the dark things that we were thinking? Like, who were we actually being? What were we feeling ashamed about? And it gave me this insight to go, wow, we are all just doing the best that we can, and we're so alike. We all struggle with the doubts and the fears and the wounds and the like, we're
Yeah.
all on this big healing journey, and we're all just at different stages of that healing journey. And it just gave me such deep compassion for the human experience. Like, it's hard, but also, with so many blessings and so much possibility. Like, it's quite a wild ride, right? Like,
Yes. Yes. And I remember hearing someone say it, like, referring to the ocean and how, like, the universe, we're all together, we're all part of the ocean, but we're
yeah,
each drop of water is each of us, but we're all one together,
yeah.
right? Creating this massive thing. So just like you're saying, yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I get shivers when you say that. Like, it's so true. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that saying. Is it by Ramdas? Like, we're all just walking each other home.
Oh, I haven't
Like,
heard that. Let's see.
oh yeah, I really love that.
And it's true. Yeah, we're all just here to help each other. So,
Yeah.
so talking a little bit about that and just how you changed, how
Mm.
this difficulty actually propelled you forward to something even greater. So how can that be for people to figure that out? Like if they're just kind of lost and to find this trajectory of their life, like a direction. Do you have
Yeah.
any insight on that?
Yeah. Well, look, I think the thing that I've realized, like, one, during that big transition, it's not the first big transition I've had either. I've had many different big transitions. I was married in an earlier life, in my very early 20s, and I've had big transitions since then. Uh, and for me, it's learning and trusting that there is a part of each and every one of us that knows exactly where it's going. Like, that
Mm.
our rational mind goes, well, I don't freaking know where I'm going. And it's trying to work it all out. But that's the intellect and relying on the rational mind. And I know I've been in that stage as well in the past, where I'm like, I've got to work this out.
Mm-hmm.
And you lie in bed and you're like thinking over it, going, well, what am I going to do? I know I'm stuck, but what am I going to do? And the rational mind is trying to work it out. And that's not where the answer is. The answer is in the heart, the answer is in the soul. And it's starting to learn to trust that if we can open up to the guidance and to that inner knowing that we all have, every single one of us has that soul guidance,
Yeah.
that soul that came here, that knows what it came here for, and also knows the deepest desires of the heart as well. It's, and that's what I've learned over the years, to go, like, I discovered, like, the law of attraction even before I went on that whole couch surfing journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, I've got to work it all out. Like, I've got to, like, manifest, like, all of this stuff that I want. And I've just realized over the year, I'm like, wow, if I just let go and I actually just start to open up to the possibilities that are around, then I get taken. I get shown the way, where it's opportunities present themselves. And but it is about, one, really working on yourself. One thing I've got a podcast episode on it to go, where, what do you do when you don't know what to do?
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't know what to do, start to focus on who you are. Who are you being called to be? So, because that will start to open up and shift the energy, because it is, it's still an energetic and an emotional journey
Yeah.
rather than an intellectual journey. So it's like, when you're stuck, don't worry so much about, well, what am I meant to be doing for work? Because often it's us trying to work out, what am I meant to be doing for work? What am I meant to be doing for survival, like for my
Mm-hmm.
money? And what, and for many of us now, what do I want to do for meaning and purpose and that fulfillment? And for me, when I look at that journey that I shared, when you think about it, I'm like, I was still trying to work out what it is that I wanted to do, but I was constantly being led to just working on myself, on healing, on, connecting, and, working on my habits, and working on, becoming the person I needed to be to be able to do what I needed to be doing. So I think that, it's like when in those moments where you're really stuck, it's an invitation to step further into who it is that you need to be in order to do what you're going to be called to do next. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. And it makes me think of your experience of how you were led to that location that was so amazing for you and had an opportunity to be still, like just to
Yes.
find yourself
Make
there. Just
time.
yeah,
Yeah, create space. That's the other key thing, when you're in that stuck place, create space. And I created a program on this recently because it's so important, like to start to let go of what no longer serves you, both physically, like start decluttering your house. If you
right,
don't know
right.
what to do next, start making actual physical room in your house. Like I cannot tell you, like I've got so many examples in my more recent years of when I've decluttered and had incredible change occur in my life as a result. But
Yeah,
then also, clearing things emotionally. Do yourself forgiveness, like forgive yourself for things and forgive others. Like what are you holding on to that you can let go of to be able to free up your energy and free up your emotions for what's next? Because that will keep you bound to the present and bound to being stuck when you're holding on to things. And then mentally, what do you need to be letting go of? What limiting beliefs do you need to change about yourself to start believing in yourself more? Like we've we've got to start trusting in ourselves more. Like
yeah,
that, no one else is going to do it. Like we have to find that within ourselves, and it's a big journey. It's
yes,
like
yeah,
layered. And then energetically looking at what do you need to let, what's draining you in your life, like start to just make room, clear it out, like clear the cobwebs out, and then it's easier as well to get still, to get quiet, and to start to feel and hear where it is that you're being pulled, or even just to have the opportunities to present themselves. Like
yeah. I love that. All the aspects of your life. And I think the material is, I mean, everything's connected. Spiritual,
everything.
material. So yeah, to
Totally.
declutter will help your spiritual, will help your emotional. Yeah, it's all one. So
It is all one,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think no one ever told me that. Like, I didn't know that. I just had to learn that over the way where I suddenly went, I'm decluttering, and then big things occur. And that's like, I've got many stories in my more recent years which really confirmed this for me. Like, one of the big pivotal moments in my own, like, professional journey and life journey was more recently. I was a coach, I was coaching, and I had my own business, and I felt really on purpose. I was like working part-time at the uni, working, had my own business, created programs, and this is what I meant to be doing. And I came back I had a month in Bali, which I love. Bali is just a
I want
beautiful
to go there
haven.
someday. Yeah.
Oh my God, you've got to get there, Shelley. Like it's a holy land.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And I got back and I was wanting to declutter. And so I cleared all of this stuff. And it was fascinating. I work with a lot of clients who want to make a difference. And I went to a social enterprise conference with a client, and I kind of felt like going, I want to get more involved. I feel a bit more removed from like actually working with organizations because I'm coaching people who are doing great stuff, but I kind of felt a bit more removed. And it was fascinating. I had this moment where I went, I think I want to get more involved in an organization doing good. And in my brain, and this is such a good example of how our intellect is so limited to how we can actually, what's available to us. But my brain went, well, maybe I could be on a board. That would be like I could be on a board for an organization. And I was like, oh, that's a good thing. I had no idea that 2 weeks later, a big flood hit our area, and a town like 45 minutes away from me, which was the largest town in our area, completely flooded, and there were thousands of people who were flood affected.
Wow.
And unbeknownst to me, I got fully immersed in the flood recovery effort. And it just happened because I got invited by a friend to a Facebook group for volunteers wanting to help. And I was like, sure. And I had just one line. And this is like where we just follow the impulses. Don't think so much about how it's all meant to be working. Just act with that in, when you just feel that pull, just follow it without worrying about it. And I just wrote this line in this Facebook group going, God, what you're doing is great. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. And unbeknownst to me, a friend went, great, and put me in as the administrator. And look, one thing led to another. And
Oh,
actually, the
wow.
three of us ended up co-leading this massive volunteer, spontaneous volunteer movement. It changed my life. We all ended up in a disused train service, train station. We had a group of 30 volunteers channeling volunteers through. We had 1,500 volunteers come out and work on 1,000
Wow.
people's home. We managed a Facebook group, which is now 32,000 people. Like it totally changed my life. Like I just stopped doing my actual job for 3 weeks. Eventually they said, you have to come back to work, Mandie. And the
Like, I'm
day that
busy
I
helping
went,
lives. So I
yeah,
can't.
yeah, it was just like that was it. Like anybody who's worked in disaster knows how quickly everything moves. Like
Yeah.
it's rapid, and I went to this town, Lismore, thinking I'm just going to help set up a meeting. Um, and I never left. I didn't leave for weeks. I didn't even have a change
Wow.
of clothes. Like people had to give me clothes to wear because I just got there, and we ended up supporting, yeah, over 1,000 people directly, many more by coordinating through the Facebook group. And we ended up starting a charity, which is now carrying on. That same town got flood affected in 2022 again,
Oh, wow.
even more. We are at the brunt of climate change here in Australia. We have very extreme weather events now that are escalating. So yeah, a 1 in 100 year flood happened just a couple of years ago, and even more people were flood affected, thousands. And so that's now a charity that's now continuing on, with the flood recovery effort in that town. But it changed my life. Like I went back to work that day that I had to go back, and I just quit because I knew that it was complete. I'd worked at the university for 7 years, and I just knew I'm done. And this is where I've started to learn to really trust, because I go, nope, I'm feeling like this is it. And I do have privilege. I'm not single anymore, but I don't have kids, don't have mortgage. So I have a lot more financial freedom than what some people do. So I can just quit on a whim and go, I know I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just quit my job, and I just knew that something else would come about. And from that moment, it was pure serendipity that has led my life ever since. It's been like, I met somebody at the flood recovery effort. We just had a conversation. And this is another really key thing about serendipity, is one of the key things is to have conversations with people, because serendipity occurs through connection. And so one of the greatest things you can do for yourself to really, increase your likelihood of having like these beautiful chance events that just happen is to connect with people. And that's all that happened to me in this flood recovery effort. I connected with a volunteer and I said, oh, what do you do when you're not here? And he said, I just got a job as the head of volunteers and cast for the Commonwealth Games ceremonies. And for the Americans, like Commonwealth Games is like the Commonwealth countries' Olympics.
Okay.
So, it's where all of us Commonwealth people come and we go and compete. And so the ceremonies are big, not as big as the Olympics, but the second biggest to us. And he said, I need to pull a team together and you should apply. And I'm like, what? I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, and at the time I was like, oh, it's not going to be meaningful enough to me. I'm like all about like social stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's just like arts and, a big ceremony for a sporting event. Anyway, I trusted my intuition and I ended up applying for it. And despite never working in castings, never working on a large scale event, never working, in ceremonies, I got the job and I ended up being the senior cast coordinator. So we coordinated 4,000 volunteer performers who performed in this big ceremony. It was like 1 billion people
Wow.
around the world watched it. I was like, how did I get here? How did
Yeah,
I get here?
that's
So,
amazing.
yeah, and it's just, and then it came from there. It was like, oh, from there, I managed a disability dance company, and I went, this is so beautiful. How do you do this? And and then serendipity, the right people turned up in my life at the right time, and I ended up managing a local disability dance company for 5 years after that. So it just led me, and I'm not special. This is for all of us. All of us have this ability to tap into this, what I call the divine flow of life. Like when we trust, when we're working on the energy that we're putting out there and working on ourselves and, really rising to the occasion of who we're being called to be, and then just like connecting to life, connecting to one another and being open and trusting, taking leaps of faith, not always needing to know where it's going to lead.
Right.
Beautiful things occur. Beautiful. Like, and that's it. Like, it's like I've learned now, I don't have to have it figured out. I like, my logical mind doesn't know what's happening next, but I trust, I know that there's that deeper, higher self part of me that does know. And that's enough for me now. I'm like, all right, great. I just have to keep following like the little breadcrumbs.
This is all so good. Oh my gosh, there's so much good stuff that you've just shared with your experiences. And just, I think you did the work. Like you had those times where you had to do the work for on yourself, right? To be open to accepting, just to go with your intuition
Yeah.
and trust. Trust is a big thing, walking forward in that faith.
It's true, and it's a constant work,
Yeah.
like, but does get easier. So if somebody's on their earlier stage of their journey, I stand here to say it does get easier because you get more evidence of the power of it. It's like,
Um,
so now I know. It's like, okay, I can trust even if I don't know. It's like, okay, there can be spaces of time where I just have to learn to surrender.
yeah, it is, you have to work continually on it, but that seeing is believing kind of thing, it's more
Yeah.
you step forward with the belief and then you see. That's really how it works. Like,
Yeah, it's true. Like it's really, yeah, absolutely. And I even had just a more recent experience when I moved to Melbourne, like, or Nam. And, I tried to look for a job. I was like, I really wanted a job because I wanted to connect with people. This is a new city for me. I don't know anyone here or very few people. And I was like, I'm going to get a job because, coaching, it can be tough to like earn the money you need as, a soul coach. And I was like, I want a job. And it just didn't happen. Like nothing happened. And thankfully, I know enough to go, oh, I've got to stop here because it's not really working. And I got another opportunity to consult in the meantime. And then 8 months later, I suddenly go, I really think I want a job. Like, the savings were getting depleted. And I was like, I think I want a job. And then through a Facebook post, I was part of a fundraisers network on Facebook, and I saw this job, and it was nothing like I was thinking of getting. It didn't have all the required information. Like I was being really, I was culling out lots of opportunities last year because I had a very fixed idea about what I thought I wanted to do. Anyway, I saw this job and there was something about it that I just went, oh, I think I'll reach out. Anyway, I started like 5 weeks ago I'm a philanthropy coordinator for a specialist hospital here part-time.
oh wow.
It's nothing like I had thought. It wasn't what I thought I would be doing. I was sort of looking for more like full-time management in other nonprofits. But this role is just so beautiful. It's so calming for my nervous system because there's no stress. Like nonprofit world's really stressful. Really stressful when you're in like under-resourced charity work.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a specialist hospital. We're the eye and ear hospital for Australia. And yeah, I'm like their philanthropy coordinator. It's just part-time. So it's just beautiful. And I'm like, such another example. And I remembered that last year where there was this pivotal moment where I was like really stressing because I was like, when I had I can still fall into that trap of like, this is the idea of how I think my life should be going.
Mm-hmm.
And then it doesn't happen. And then we get jarred. And there was this moment where I went, I've just got to surrender. And it was like, what am I being called to do? And I remember just going and being called to just lay in a park for like hours a day. So I spent days just going and lying in a park. And I got that message of like, I'm just being taught to keep surrendering, to keep trying to circumvent the natural tendency for our mind and our intellect to want to control where we're going. And So I talk about it being soul led. It's a totally different way. It's very contrary to the way that most people are living, because everyone
Uh,
thinks they've got to have a plan. And even in the
mhm.
manifestation world, it's like there's this term that says if you can't imagine it, if you won't create it. And that's not true. Like all the things that I've talked to you about today, I never imagined. Like I'd had other than the living in the forest near the beach, I had that idea. I
Oh
thought
yeah.
that would be really cool. I'd put
Uh-huh.
that on a vision board. But
Hmm.
other than that, I'm like, flood recovery effort, global ceremony, like coaching, or like even now, it's just like these things I didn't manifest them from my mind, but they came from being in the flow and just being open and trusting in divine timing, which often is contrary to our own timeline.
Yes.
That's the other thing. Like we've just got to be patient. Like eight
Yeah.
months. If you told me it was going to take me 8 months to get a job, I said on my own podcast, I would have vomited. Like you can go. I'm like, what? But it's
Yeah.
all happened in the right time. Like, yeah.
Yeah. You just got to keep trusting and keep having that faith to keep going forward and just doing what you can. Yeah.
Yeah, and just knowing, like just being, trusting in the next right step. And
Yeah.
we always have exactly what we need to take the next right step.
I love that.
Always.
Yeah.
Like we're never without the capacity just to take the next right step. And that may require us, like getting out of your comfort zone,
Hmm.
taking a leap of faith, like doing something different, facing whatever you need to heal inside, like
Yeah.
but you always have what it takes to do the next right thing.
And maybe, and even take that step and you have to pause. Take that next step, have to pause, and listen each time.
Yeah, and if you have to put like it doesn't, yeah, that's it, just trust your own journey as well. Like don't, like I've had to really stop looking at other people's life and compare. Comparison is the thief of all joy, and it really is.
Yeah.
Like you're in your own journey, you're on your own timeline, and that's what really matters. And yeah, trusting that as well. So it's, yeah, like we keep saying trust a lot, right? It
Yeah.
comes down to trusting a lot.
Yeah, trust God. He's good. He knows everything. Sure. This has been so amazing to talk to you. You are such a beautiful person. I mean, just the experiences that you're sharing, they're so energizing, really, to just want to move forward and trust. Again, just,
Well, that's
and
good.
and to be patient with ourselves and to be patient with, you know, listening and being still. Sometimes that's hard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, particularly in our busy lives, like
Yeah.
making the space for that can be a challenge for some people, particularly if they've got kids and they've got, demands that they've built in their life. It can be quite the journey to extract yourself from those.
Yeah.
And Yeah, look, well, one thing I would just say that I've shared a lot of my journey here, but I just share my stories, mostly my stories at the moment on my podcast. So people, if they want to hear more, if they really, and I do it, I share because I really do just want to be an example to go, you can take those leaps and not know where they're going to go. And I just provide the evidence of how it works out when you can trust, when you don't, like, and I just sort of constantly want to share the beauty of, you don't have to have it all figured out intellectually, that there is just something so much greater than us, and so much so much beauty that can occur in a life when we open up to it. And yeah, so I've learned so much about trust and surrender, and developing that faith in, and it's also faith in yourself and faith in
Yeah.
that inner knowing. But faith, like you talked about God, and I talk about it as the divine, but it's that same, it's
Hmm.
that that and the force of love that connects us all and that knows all, as you say. Like, just imagine it, it's like we had that God and the divine created life,
Yeah.
created all of this, and we are connected to that. Like how much power we have that
Right.
we don't realize. Like,
Yeah.
and so it's just realizing for me, like opening up to that. And it's so, yeah, like I said, it's very contrary to, even like that modern day manifestation, which is all like affirmations and like really having to, figure it all out. Like Yeah, I have so many examples from my own life. How much do we think that we know what we want, but actually something else could be waiting for us that is beyond what we expected, but also beyond magical for us. So I think that's it, just really opening our mind, like opening our minds to what's possible for us.
You're just amazing. You are.
Oh,
You're such a
Shelley, thank
beautiful
you.
soul.
Thanks so much for having me on and giving me the chance to just share my story. I really just want to help inspire others to really trust in themselves and to trust in the possibilities that exist for them, and to know that they're not doing it alone. Like there are just all of us are being supported by divine unseen forces.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
yeah, so yeah, I'm so grateful that you reached out and that I got to have this chance to connect with you as well. And you're just doing such beautiful work yourself, Shelley. It's clear that you're really being led, by that divine force as well.
Thank you. And I will have all, yeah, go ahead and tell people where they can find you, and I'll put the links in the show notes as well.
Sure. So my business is called Soul Strategies, and they can find me at soulstrategies.co is my, the web address. That's where you'll also find my podcast. The podcast at the moment is called Find Your Calling, but it is going to be doing a rebrand. So if you just go to Soul Strategies, you'll be able to be directed to the podcast, and that's where you'll get my stories, but also very practical advice, around how to implement, both spiritual and scientific principles to really, direct your life to where creating a really true, authentic life that is meaningful and fulfilling. And that's where you'll find I offer oracle readings at the, a new thing that I'm doing is offering oracle readings to help light people's way forward. I do coaching. I've got that program, Create Space for Change. So yeah, go to soulstrategies.co. And I'm also in Instagram fairly irregularly though. But I did want to say to your listeners that on the website, there is a free meditation called Infinite Possibilities.
Okay.
And it's binaural beat. So it really works on the subconscious, and that really can help you open up to, the possibilities, and to really start to, work on that, the mental space of really believing in things that are possible for you. And that's free. So you can download that, and then, yeah, you'll be on my mailing list and we could stay in contact.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you. Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Oh, thanks, Shelley. Thanks so much.